Right guys, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a mid-season review of F1 Fantasy on who you should have in your team, who is the best driver and constructor to have out of 10, to give you guys a little bit of help for who you want to have in your team. Right, so first off, the first person to look at is Max Verstappen. And this season, as you can see from his points total, he's had 512 points so far. He's the top dog you really want. He's still very expensive, 30.4 mil. So that's the only downside to him. But just look how many points he's getting. That is just insane. Definitely, Verstappen is still up there as one of the top choices. 10 out of 10. On to Hamilton, where he's worth 30.1 million, which I still think is way too steep for him, considering even though he's had a good run of form in the last 5 races getting podiums, he's still not worth 30.1 mil. Considering he's only had 2 second places and 4 third places, I think that 30.1 mil is too expensive, so I'm going to put him at around a 7 out of 10. Still a great choice, but if you want to go for someone who's expensive, you go for Verstappen. Then on to George Russell, who's worth 24 mil. Again, both Mercedes are too expensive, but he's got qualifying and race streaks coming up, so he will be getting extra points soon, and he's Mr. Consistent. He's always in the top 5. So again, I wouldn't recommend picking him, but if you want a differential that's not one of the Red Bulls or the Ferraris, considering how Mercedes are looking at the minute, George Russell might be your guy. So I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Solid differential, better than Hamilton because he's cheaper and they're going to get you the same points. Like, as you can see, their points are basically equal. Now onto the first Ferrari, which is Charles Leclerc. As you can see, he's getting first, he's getting seconds. He's doing well in qualifying, getting you loads of points. Only 375, which was less than I thought. But the 18.8 mil, he's still, when that Ferrari wants to work and the Ferrari strategists aren't fucking him over, he's got to be a number 1 choice. 10 out of 10, considering he's got a qualifying streak going on, so he's going to get more points. And 375 points, which is more than both Mercedes, and he's cheaper. It's a no-brainer. Even though he won't get you consistent points every week because he'll DNF and like Ferrari just being Ferrari, is still better than having one of Russell or Hamilton. So I would give him a 9 out of 10. Then on to Sergio Perez. Again, a great cheap driver. I would say another differential, considering if you wanted a Red Bull driver, you're going to go for Verstappen. But for 18.2 mil, he doesn't have any streaks coming up, which is a bit of a shame. But he gets a few first places, he's got a few second places. Qualifying's not the best, but for 343 points, he's worth a shot. Considering he's cheaper than both Mercedes and only 20 points less, it means you'll be able to buy someone like Verstappen and him at the same time. So Sergio Perez, 9 out of 10. Perfect for if you want a cheap, good driver. Last but not least, Carlos Sainz coming in at 17.2 mil, which is very cheap for the top 3 teams. But I would advise, I'm going to get rid of him in my team as well. I would advise to get rid of Sainz. It's just, when Leclerc finishes, he always finishes ahead of Sainz, and his qualifying recently hasn't been the best. And I just think if you want a cheap driver, you'd go for Perez over Sainz. There's not enough of a drop from Perez to Sainz, considering how little points Sainz is getting compared to the other guys. 310 points, just don't think it's enough, considering everyone's getting like at least 30 points more than him total. So yeah, the only thing he's got good going for him is he's got streaks coming up, which gets you a few extra points. But yeah, Sainz, 5 out of 10. I would steer clear of him for now. Right, then the next 2 drivers are going to be able to be done very quickly, with Lando Norris coming in at 15.9 mil. Total points, 226 points. He's got a race streak. Just for 16 mil, he is not worth it at all. That McLaren, some days it can be like top 5, some days it can be last. I would steer clear, very clear of him. Again, not enough of a drop to consider changing Perez, or if you've got Sainz for Norris. So Norris, not good enough. He's only had 1 podium this season, which is great in that McLaren, but he just doesn't give you enough points. 3 out of 10, steer clear of him. Then on to Daniel Ricciardo, which breaks my heart to say, but for 14.1 mil, total of 93 points, he is the worst pick to have in your team. No race or qualifying streaks coming up soon. So expensive compared to other drivers. Get him out of your squads if anyone has him. 6th place once. Qualifying 7th place once. Oh my god, he is not the driver you want to get in. 1 out of 10. Then, sadly, onto one of the other worst picks, I think, is Pierre Gasly. That AlphaTauri and him have just not been clicking this season. No qualifying streaks or race streaks coming up. Only a total of 126 points. It's just not worth 13 mil. And I kind of didn't realise until I looked at it now how bad his total points are. So steer clear away from Gasly. So yeah, 2 out of 10. A bit better than Ricciardo, but still way too expensive for how little points he's got you. Right, and then Fernando Alonso, he's worth 12.6 million. Qualifying and race streaks coming up, so that's good for him. Total points 160. It's just not enough for his price. And I know people might be going, that's crazy. Alonso's a great driver, but considering who I'm going to show you next, it's just not worth getting Alonso. If you want a differential, sure, because he might start doing bits in the second half of the season. But for now, it's not worth getting, considering who I'm about to get onto has more points than him and they drive in the same car and is cheaper. 4 out of 10. Right, his teammate Esteban Ocon, 12.3 mil, 0.3 mil less than Alonso and 35 points more. Race streak coming up. He's only getting higher in value, so you want to get him in now. Ocon is a great choice for a mid-price driver. Definitely one of my personal favourites to put in my team now. And just look at his stats. They speak for himself. Get him in. 8 out of 10 choice. Sebastian Vettel, 11.4 mil. Way too expensive for the car he's in. But I was surprised when I saw he's got 151 points. He's got no streaks coming in, so that's a shame. 151 points. I'm very surprised to actually say Vettel might be a decent differential. Someone else than the Alpines or the AlphaTauris. So I would say he's not a bad shout. Considering it's his final season as well, if you just want a bit of fun and to put him in your team for like respect. Perfect driver for it. He's not a great choice, but he's not a bad choice. 6 out of 10. Could do a lot worse and would be a great differential because not a lot of people have him. Now, onto one of the most controversial people I'm going to talk about, Valtteri Bottas. Now, no race or qualifying streaks coming up. He has had a total of 183 points for 9.6 million, which is fantastic, but he's just not been scoring points recently. I'm going to take him out of my team personally, and I don't think he's the right driver to take on for the rest of the season. Alfa Romeo are falling further and further back into the grid, and I just don't think it's the right time. I think it's the right time to get him out of your team. So Bottas, 9.6 mil. Again, if you don't think Alfa Romeo are going to fall behind and you think they're still going to be good, keep him in. But from the last few races, it just doesn't look like they're a good choice. They're not very reliable as well, so I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. Right, then Lance Stroll next, worth 9.2 mil. And to be honest, I was surprised that he had a total of 154 points. It was more than I thought he had. But you know what? 9.2 mil, again, like Vettel, he's another great differential. I'd take him in my team, but again, I just don't trust that Aston Martin. So I'm not going to be putting him in my team. But for another differential, who's going to score you points? 6 out of 10. Then up next is Yuki Tsunoda. And my God, when I was talking about Pierre Gasly, I thought Tsunoda would have had a similar points to him. Oh my God, how wrong was I? Oh my God, no qualifying or race streaks coming up. Yes, he's worth 8.3 mil, which is a lot cheaper than Gasly. But fucking hell, he's had 37 points. I didn't realise how bad he was doing until I saw that. Wow, steer clear of him. Daniel Ricciardo isn't the worst choice. Tsunoda possibly has this. Steer so clear of him. Not worth it at all. 1 out of 10. Then again, Guan Yu Zhou up next. He's had a few good points. He's got 57 points for 8.2. That's all right. But again, considering who I'm about to speak to after these, just not worth getting. Absolutely not at all. 57 points isn't enough for his price tag, where his teammate's only like a mil more, and he's got 130 more points. And there's cheaper guys who have got more points to him. So 1 out of 10. Steer clear of Guan Yu Zhou. Now, onto one of the cheap drivers. That is another great choice. Alex Albon. 7.6 mil, 107 points. It's just so worth it. Look how many points he's got for beating teammate in qualifying and race and positions gained. So worth it. 7.6 mil for 107 points is outrageous. Yes, he's in a Williams, and yes, he's not going to score you loads of points. But if you want to be picking the Verstappens, the Hamiltons, or the Leclercs, you've got to have someone like Albon in your team. And I think he's one of the best ones to have. So 9 out of 10, I would have everyone having Albon in their team. Don't have to say much about this guy. 6'7" mil. Latifi the GOAT. 10 out of 10. Obviously the best choice in the game. You've got to pick him. If you don't, you obviously have no F1 knowledge. So just get out of here. But yeah, Latifi the GOAT. 10 out of 10 choice. Everyone has to have him in their team. Now, onto the last two drivers, which are both Haas drivers. Mick Schumacher, 6.3 mil, 95 points. This is your man. I would have said Magnussen earlier during the season. But his recent run of form, just look. 6th place, qualified 6th, race positions gained, plus 42 points. Mad, 95 points overall. You got to bring him in if you want a cheap driver. Crazy, 9 out of 10. Then finally, Kevin Magnussen. Not much to say about him. He's 6.1 mil, so a bit cheaper than Schumacher. But I think that 0.2 mil is not going to have much of an effect. And he's got a few more points. I'd go for Schumacher these days. Magnussen's looking a bit off every now and then now. He's getting a lot of retirements as well. So I'd go for Schumacher. Again, it's still good. I'd give him like a 6-7 out of 10. Still very good to have in your team if you can't afford anyone else, because he's still better than picking Tsunoda, Zhou, Latifi. I would even say Albon just because of the price difference. But yeah, 6 or 7 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. And now I'll go on to the teams. Now going on to the first constructor, Mercedes, and 33.8 mil. Again, the same situation with everything in Mercedes in Fantasy F1. Too expensive. Yes, they're scoring you the second most constructor points. Perfect. They've got a qualifying streak going on. So again, differential merchants, if you want to get a team that's not Red Bull and getting good points, get Mercedes. It's not worth how much they are. Again, so I'm going to have to give them a 7 out of 10 because yes, it's not worth how much they are. They're still going to get you loads of points compared to every other team apart from Red Bull. Onto Red Bull, 33 mil. Again, a bit expensive, but considering they give you the most points, it's a no-brainer. 10 out of 10. These guys are the constructor to pick. Get them in your team. 761 points, almost 100 points more than Mercedes, which is the closest team to them. Right, and then surprisingly, the last constructor I'm going to talk about, yeah, I know I've only talked about 2 so far, so I'm only going to be talking about 3, but it's Ferrari. 25.8 mil, 610 points, qualifying and race streak not really anywhere near. Yes, they get you good points, but I know because I had Ferrari early on in the season, they got me loads of points at the start, but it's just so annoying to have Ferrari on your team because they manage to fuck up every single race. So I would say not the best choice, probably a 5.5 out of 10 because they're the cheapest of the top 3. However, they've given you 150 odd points less than Red Bull. And if you want to do really well in this F1 Fantasy, you need to pick and choose who you want to get. And constructors are so important in F1 Fantasy. You have to pick Red Bull as your top dog. So Ferrari, like I said, 5.5 out of 10, steer clear. Onto every other constructor is a no-go. 1 out of 10. I'll show you some stats for instance. Best team you can get out of the top 3 would be Alpine for 14 million. They got you 281 points. That's more than half less the points even Ferrari give you, which is ridiculous considering their price. So yeah, steer clear of McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams. Just not worth it at all. When you go for constructor, you have to go for one of the top 3 teams. As you can clearly see, Red Bull give you 750 points, and Verstappen, the best driver for points, only gives you 500 odd points, which is still a lot, but so like 200 less than what Red Bull will give you as a constructor. So yeah, 0 out of 10 for every other team out of the top 3. And yeah, that's it.